I hope you're all keeping safe and well. This is our first live event, of course, since we went to lockdown again with the move to level 5 of the National Framework for Living with COVID-19. And with that move to level 5, we're actually changing regularity of our live events again. So if you've been keeping up, we've changed a few times over the last few shows. We're moving back to a weekly show. But just to let you know a little bit about why that's happening, we're actually just trying to make sure that the live events are mirroring a little bit, aligning with the national framework. So when we move to level 4 or level 5, we're going to have a weekly live event. That's what we're moving back to now, is a weekly live event for the next few weeks. And then when it drops to level 3 or lower, we're going to, again, roughly align the regularity of our shows with those levels. So we'll drop the regularity to maybe every couple of weeks or so. So just to let you know what to expect over the coming weeks, we're going to be with you every week throughout November and until the level drops in the National Framework for Living with COVID-19. So let's move on with today's show. What have we got lined up for you today? Well, first up, we have a new piece called Meet the Team. And that's a new series starting today that's designed to help you to get to know the people who make up the NCBI Labs team around the country. In just a few moments, we're going to introduce you to our technology training manager, Denis Nolan. We're going to find out a little bit about his role in the team as well. So we look forward to that in just a few moments. But after that, we're also going to be talking about PDFs and accessibility. Now, that might sound incredibly exciting to you already, and maybe it's exciting enough already, but just in case it doesn't, we're going to be talking about some of the reasons why it is actually important to know a little bit about PDFs from an accessibility point of view, because it can actually make a big difference to how well we manage with various forms and documents. So stick around for that a little bit later on as well. And then finally today, we're going to be chatting to our regular live events team, Daniel, JP and Sean. And we're going to have one of our regular guests with us as well, Joe Lonergan, to talk about some of the latest tech news. So there's a few things that we're going to be talking about, such as new offerings from Apple, as well as updates to the Alexa device and the Google Nest rebrand, a few different things that we'll talk about a little bit later on in this show. So again, we look forward to that a little bit later on, and we'll chat to our panel about those. So lots to look forward to in today's show. But first up today, we want to give you a chance to meet the team, as we said. And for the first piece in this series, I'm delighted to introduce our technology training manager, Denis Nolan. Denis, you're very welcome to the show today. Good to have you with us.
Thank you, Jude. It's great to be here.
So, Denis, maybe you can give us a little bit of just background information, just introduce yourself a little bit to the listeners. How long have you been with NCBI?
Very new to the role, Jude. I started on the 5th of this month, so I think I'm just going into my 4th week.
Okay, so up and running straight away, and you're straight onto the live event. There's no mercy.
Yeah, it apparently not. I didn't know, of course, being new to the team, I didn't know that this was the first time you've brought in this Meet the Team segment to it. So I suppose I'm I'm becoming a pioneer now as well.
That's it, exactly. Yeah, very good. So tell us a little bit about your background, Denis. Just anything that you're kind of happy to include. Just maybe your background, your training, life before NCBI, if such a thing existed.
Yeah, I will. So my background, I've been always involved, always liked computers. Back when it was kind of black screen and white text, and my friends were looking at me like I had two heads, wondering why I was interested in technology when they were interested in going out and doing other things. And while sport was always a massive part of my life, I suppose it competed with technology all the time. So I go back quite a long time in technology. I've always very much enjoyed it. I've loved it. In fact, I've loved what it could do from way back when I used to look at applications and look at technology as a means to solve certain problems as I would see them. I started from a working point of view then, Jude. I started in London. I was working certainly from a technology point of view. I was a database administrator in London. I worked there for a number of years. I moved up to the north of England and I started getting into computer programming. and the kind of technical side of things. So from taking pieces apart and building them back up together. And then from that, it led into training. So teaching people how to do what I had learned in college, but mostly from my own interest in it. So the training started. I think I came back to Ireland then. We had our first of two children, my daughter, and we came back to Ireland to live and bring her up in Ireland. And I started training then, and that was back in the early noughties. And from that, I think it was an element that I never could foresee. I quite like just getting involved in building things and my own way, but the training from that day on, I've embraced it. I've loved it. I've loved being able to put across my knowledge to other people and see them benefit from it. And from then, so I've been involved in training now for, I'd say, the best part of 25 years, managing and delivering training.
Yeah, well, that's really interesting, and that ties in as well a bit to your role, quite a lot to your role now with Ncbi. So where is it that you're based, Denis? What is your kind of role in Ncbi at the moment?
So my base is Tala, but I'm mixing it between Tala and Drumcondra. I'd say I usually about 3 days in Tala, maybe 2 days in Drumcondra. So that's my base. And what my role consists of is I've come into a very well established and very professional outfit of the Ncbi labs, and we've got a team of people in there who look after the requirements of service users from the point of view of delivering training around assistive technology, to actually looking at devices and showing them how devices can work, or in fact even fixing a device for them as well. So that's where I come in. So I've got I'm with a team of trainers that cover the length and breadth of the country, and I suppose that's my job, is coming in and seeing where they're at, trying to, from talking with them, understand what it is that they're all doing, and seeing if there's any ways or anything we can add to what's already on offer.
Yeah, very good. So you're being treated okay there, are you, Denis? They're not being too hard on you, putting you on live events too soon, and you're with Ncbi or anything like that.
No, not at all, Drew. I'm being treated very well. I've been allowed kind of that first 3 weeks. It's nearly like an induction for me, and I've been given that kind of that freedom and that space, that headspace to get to know everybody. So it would be, I think, much different had I been brought into the role and dumped straight in and expected to start running. It's been a really nice lead in. I've got to meet all the team on a one-to-one level, and especially with the current environment where it's impossible to meet them physically. So virtually, I've met all the team, and it's been an eye opener. It's really exciting actually to see what's been done by everybody, because my training before now, it wasn't really in the assistive technology area, so it's been very interesting for me.
Yeah, and it's always interesting to kind of come in with a different perspective as well, to add to something that's already established. So that'll be interesting. Are there any things that you've got kind of particularly in mind at the moment that you want to look into developing, or any particular projects you're looking at?
So I think I'm looking at what's already on offer, and it's quite broad. And then I want to try, and I'm trying to bring that all together into one place, so we can all kind of get together and pull from one area all of the materials that we need, or add to existing material. So no, it's nothing particular. I'm just looking at what's out there already. I kind of keep an eye, or my finger on the pulse, I'd like to think, on new technologies that are coming out, or existing technologies that may have been improved, and in doing that, then making sure that, I suppose, our training and our materials are up to date and match what's out there.
Yeah, very good. That'll be a good piece of work as well, and vitally important at the moment, isn't it? The training, considering the change in our dependence on technology as well.
Yeah, I think so, and I think you mentioned earlier, Jude, I think it's wonderful that we can just switch over to being there for the service user, and being aware of the conditions we're currently facing, that we are a resource that has kind of moved with those conditions. So you were just mentioning yourself, the live events now are going on a weekly basis, given the current conditions. So yeah, I think it's great.
Brilliant. Very good. Well, that's been great to have a bit of a chat with you today, Denis. Appreciate you having time to come on the show. I'm sure we'll coerce you back onto the show at some point in the future as well.
Absolutely.
Something for you to look forward to there, Denis.
Indeed it is, Jude, and thanks very much.
Very good. Thanks a lot, Denis.
Thank you, Jude.
Good stuff. So now on with today's show. As we said, we're going to be talking a little bit about PDFs and accessibility. Now, why is it important to know a little bit about PDFs when it comes to accessibility? Well, to help us with this, we're going to have our regular panel. But I think JP is going to be giving some of the main information here. So maybe we can just invite our regular panel on. And just to get us started here, can we just explain a little bit, what exactly are PDF documents? Why do people use PDFs?
Sure. Hi, Jude. So yeah, just to give us a bit of context, a bit of background, the PDF is short for a portable document format, and it's a file with the extension .pdf. So PDFs, they're typically used to share and view read-only documents, so while keeping the layout of the page. And it's probably fair to say that everyone listening will have come across PDFs at some time, or we use them quite regularly. Think about common uses for PDFs that include documents such as manuals and ebooks and application forms, even CVs, just to name a few. I suppose really the PDF was originally created by Adobe Systems, and this is actually going back nearly 30 years, back in the early 1990s. And it's the intention of Adobe Systems to do two things with the PDF. The first thing was that people should be able to open documents on any hardware or operating system without needing to have the app to create them. All you need is a PDF reader. And these days, most people will have either Adobe Reader or a web browser to fit the bill, so to speak. The second goal was that wherever you open a PDF, the layout of the document should look the same. So it keeps the formatting of the text and so forth. So this means that it gives us the PDF kind of a huge amount of kind of versatility. You can send a PDF document to someone on a Mac from a PC, and vice versa. You can send it from someone sending a PDF from a Mac back to a PC or a mobile phone, and it keeps the formatting and everything else. So it's a huge advantage there.
Yeah. So can you not do that with Microsoft Word, for example? Just give us an example of what would happen if I tried to do that with Microsoft
you
Word.
can. However, you could be sure that with Adobe using a PDF, sending a PDF file, it keeps the formatting. Plus, I suppose the other thing is that maybe not everyone has Microsoft Word. So whereas PDF Reader is freeware. So
I agree with JP there, Jude. You can spend a long time making a Word document accessible. You have to pull in legacy text boxes, you have to pull in legacy check boxes, you have to section off the document in different ways and protect certain parts and let other parts be editable, and it's very, very time consuming to get it right. And then like JP said, you could send that to somebody who's just using an iPhone, and they mightn't have Microsoft Word, and what way do they go about it? Maybe I suppose I'm talking about in terms of if it was an editable form. But if you were, which is a common thing that is PDFs are used, or so if you were to send it to someone who only had an iPhone and they hadn't got Word, it kind of leaves them kind of stuck. And then PDFs are more universal, so you can download a PDF to any device and there'll be a PDF reader on that.
Yeah, very good. So that kind of gives a bit of a sense straight away that the PDF is almost like a universal reader in a way. So long as it's sort of translated into PDF, then it's fine.
I think that's going back to when these were created back in the early 90s. That was exactly the intention of Adobe Systems when they created these. It's interesting to go back when these were created. They were an idea from the co-founder of Adobe Systems, Uncle John Warnock. He had the intention, I suppose, of moving Adobe Systems to a paperless office, so people wouldn't need to print documents. That's why he came up with this. So it started off as an internal project to create a file format so documents could spread throughout the company and displayed in any computer on any operating system. And this went from there over the last 30 years. It's supposed to become so popular now.
Yeah, interesting. So that in itself, if we were to kind of leave the conversation there, it sounds straight away that this will always be, it sounds very inclusive. It sounds like something that's going to let everybody be able to read the content very easily. But then we come on to the idea of accessibility. Are PDFs accessible? If I used it as a broad question like that, is that a question that can be answered?
Yeah, it's a good question. And this really does come down to how the PDF files have been created. So PDFs are created by exporting documents from their native format into a PDF. So just to give you some examples, typically a PDF documents will be created in Microsoft Word, Microsoft PowerPoint, or sometimes even Adobe InDesign. But really, it comes down to the native format of what's being where it was created. Okay. So yeah, exactly. Now, as another point as well as this to point out, is that many PDF files are simply images of text as well, that are created by just scanning hard copy documents, and that's obviously not great because they're not accessible. And
that's very frustrating because, like you were saying, somebody went to the trouble of making an original document that is digital. And somewhere down the line, somebody printed out that digital document and then scanned it back in and saved it as a PDF image. And therefore, all accessibility is lost and broken. So, I mean, that has no effect on a sighted person who might print out a document and fill out the form that way. But for someone who needs to access the information through a screen reader, that's, in the past, that was an absolute, full stop, that you were not going to be able to access that information. And luckily now there are ways around it. It's a band-aid, like it should be fixed at the source, but there is OCR modes with certain screen readers that can scan that PDF from a saved file and then produce the text digitally for a screen reader.
So it's almost, if we were to describe that to somebody, I guess it's kind of like somebody's taken a photograph of text, but the device doesn't understand what the text is. It's like before we learned to read and write, I guess. If you were to look at a page of text, you wouldn't understand actually what it's talking about. You'd see it, but you wouldn't understand it.
And the screen reader's just going to read out like graphic or unlabeled graphic, and all the information in it's lost. Well, it was in the past. Now there is ways, like I said, we can OCR it. Or even in the past, people might have had to print out that document and then put it in a scanner and use software like Kurzweil. But now it can be done from the system itself, which is what it is.
Just to add into that explanation there, when you mention OCR, just tell us a small little bit about OCR. What is OCR?
Optical character recognition. So it's a digital way of scanning a document. Like in the past, like libraries would have used it in the past to scan old books, make digital copies, and you'll often hear people saying, "Oh, I have the OCR version of such and such a book." And I know that because there might be a certain mistake in it, but it's gotten so much better since then, and the technology's become so much more portable. Like people would have had scanners or SARA machines or large devices in the past that you would have to put a document in and 10 or 15 seconds scanning it and then reading back. Now we have like seeing AI on our phone, which one snap and we have that document read back to us.
Yes.
A popular thing in the past, Sean, just to let people, I suppose, understand what happened, is in offices, somebody would request, some information to be emailed out to them, or, a form maybe to be emailed out to them. And, usually somebody in the office, there's one actually printed, that's being printed off, stick it in the scanner, scan that onto a USB. Went back to the computer and emailed it out, and that's where an awful lot of these documents, I suppose, came into existence, that when they hit a screen reader, then you're just getting that image message the whole time.
Yes, so it's kind of circular as well, isn't it? Because it's like it starts digital, goes into hard copy, and then ends up digital again, but not particularly good digital.
And that makes that even makes it harder to edit then when that becomes people's first version of that document, because it's an image, you can't go in and change it, you can't go in and rearrange it. While if you can locate the original document, which is digital, it allows the end user to do so much more with it.
And Joe here, Jude. Also, the JAWS brought in the OCR feature, and that's what it's most used for. That actually reading inaccessible PDFs. sometimes JAWS will automatically call back to you if it's inaccessible and offer to OCR the document for you. And if it doesn't, you can just press the applications key and go down and OCR the document. I think JP actually covered it in a previous live event. There's a video out there, but so that's not a way around it. But
definitely best to go back to the source, and best practice there and making it accessible from the start. But yeah, as Joe said, you definitely have the option to use the convenient OCR in JAWS. And as far as I know, the more recent version of JAWS, I think it's 2018, certainly you're prompted with a message to say that you can perform the convenient OCR on the document that is an image file.
Yeah, very good. Okay, so just from that perspective then, because that might be something that people have heard a little bit, maybe if they've got JAWS and they've had the prompt coming up about that. What else might somebody see? Let's say they've got an accessible PDF document in front of them and then one that's not accessible. What's the difference?
Sure. Well, I suppose essentially a PDF document is considered accessible if it can be used by anyone. For people with sight loss, the PDF should be fully accessible, obviously using assistive software. I say it could be JAWS, it could be NVDA, be VoiceOver on your iPhone, your iPad, or also with screen magnification software. So it's that's ultimately the difference. It's making it accessible to everyone. But there are obviously things that we can do to make an accessible PDF accessible as well. Yeah.
So how would you go about that?
Sure. Well, first of all, it's possible to check the accessibility of a PDF document and make the changes that are needed using software. Adobe Acrobat Professional. It's something that we do here in Ncbi. The labs team are quite involved with this kind of work. So if we take a look at some of the characteristics of an accessible PDF, and this is obviously an exhaustive list, but some of the examples, it might include things like one very important thing would be a logical reading order. So this is the order in which a screen reader reads out the content in the document. So this often would find needs to be adjusted. So to say, for example, if we open a PDF and the screen reader straight away reads out maybe an item halfway down the page, it could be an image file or maybe some text or a paragraph that's not at the top of the page, then this will need to be reordered in Adobe Acrobat Professional. So that's one very, very kind of, I suppose, important thing to fix, just kind of a logical reading order so that the text is read from the top of the page downwards.
Yes.
But there's plenty of other things. I mean, to give you some other example is another thing that kind of characteristic that we'll be looking at for is make sure that there's alternative text or alt text included for all the images. So this will be provided for any images featured in the PDF. So the screen reader user can understand the message that's conveyed in the images that are featured. The idea here is that the text inserted should be kind of quite succinct and accurate, so not too kind of long-winded. We don't want a full description of everything going on, but just keeping it quite succinct, concise. And we find this could be particularly useful if there's a graph or maybe some infographic on the PDF that there needs to be an alt text attribute for.
So a little kind of summary description almost of
exactly. Yeah. Other things that we'd look out for would be a heading structure. So screen reader user would often use a heading structure to navigate the content of the PDF. This would include headings, so headings like heading 1, heading 2, and so forth. It just makes it easier, much more straightforward to navigate the PDF using the screen reader. Very, very useful in long documents. I'm just thinking, one example would be our weekly technology newsletter. So maybe someone is interested in going to an article, maybe 2 or 3 articles into the newsletter. They want to get to that one, they can just press H, for example, if they're going to want to go to that one. But there are other examples. For example, our Insight magazine, our quarterly newsletter, they can press H to go to the next heading and the next heading. That's where the heading structure comes into play.
I think with the layout, a lot of the PDFs are made by graphic designers, and they're bringing in maybe the images first and then bringing in the spaces they want to put text in, and then they're populating that text. So as each thing gets brought in sequentially, it's giving a reading order because the screen the PDF thinks that that's going to be the first thing and that's going to be the second thing, even though you've placed it midway or near the bottom of the screen. So that's why JP is talking about going in and then manually rechanging that reading order
Yeah.
So the graphic designer is making a digital copy, but he is also putting in order in terms of what a computer would see. So that has to be fixed afterwards.
Yeah, I think that's very interesting, actually, because unless somebody comes from a background where they've been working with accessibility, or maybe a programming background or something, you're not necessarily going to intuitively know what the logical reading order is, because it's different from how it looks.
I think the point of like sort of discussions like this is it's to give our listeners an idea of what the problem is, so they can also report it back confidently to people and say, well, it is digital and I can read it, but it's completely, all over the shop in terms of it doesn't make any sense because it's reading this part of the article first and this part of the article second.
Yeah, yeah.
And it's allowing people to sort of at least have the knowledge of why it's doing that.
Yeah. So when you described there just how a PDF document can be made accessible, is that something, you mentioned a particular piece of software, but is that something that anybody could do at home, or do you need to have a bit more of background and a bit of training as to how to make a PDF document accessible?
You would need the application to see and break down the document into the reading order and the heading structure and the alt text.
Right.
So that not everyone will be able to do that at home, and also it's a very visual thing because you're looking at the elements on the screen and looking at the current reading order and then having to change that order. So there's no way for a non-sighted person to fix this as of yet.
Gotcha. Yeah, that's important to know as well.
Yeah, which is something that hopefully in the future that they can kind of find a work around that, because at the minute you visually have to see, oh, that's got reading order 7, but yeah, that's the first thing on the page. That should be reading order 1.
Yes. Yeah. So in other words, if I've got vision but I don't have the right package, I can't do the job. And if I've got the right package but I don't have any vision, I can't do the job. It needs to be, you need to have to kind of know how to be able to make a PDF accessible if it's not already.
Yeah, and hopefully in the future that'll change.
Yeah. Okay. So tell me something, when it comes to actually creating a PDF document, let's say somebody is making it from the start and they're trying to make sure it's accessible. Is it left to the creator of that document to work out how to make it accessible, what works best, or are there certain accessibility standards that a PDF document should adhere to?
Yeah, well, that's a good point. I mean, it's a good question. The important thing here is to note that, regardless of the origin of the document, it is best to ensure that it's accessible in its native format before it's exported to PDF. But then there are certain accessibility standards that a PDF document could adhere to, which is something could definitely be worth checking out for someone who is assessing a PDF, the accessibility of a PDF. Yeah. So to just give you a couple of some information about that, there are accessibility guidelines that are actually available from 2 separate organizations, which actually recommend how to make PDF documents accessible. Just for starters, there is the International Organization for Standardization, or what's known as the ISO, and they've made available what's called the PDF UA, which is Portable Document Format Universal Accessibility. And these were produced, I think it's about maybe 7 or 8 years ago. Basically, it's a document from the ISO that contains recommendations on making your PDF document accessible. But to complement this, there's also Web Content Accessibility Guidelines, WCAG 2.0, and more recently WCAG 2.1, which was released in, I think it was June 2018. And I think a lot of people listening in might be familiar with this. These are guidelines that have been produced or developed by the World Wide Web Consortium, or W3C. Now, I think a lot of people listening in will be familiar with W3C because they have the goal of making web pages and web applications more accessible, but not everyone might know that they actually have guidelines in relation to making PDF documents accessible too. Yeah, which is interesting. So they use, like, if you look at the Web Content Accessibility Guidelines, they provide a list of testable, what are called success criteria for making PDFs accessible. And what's more, they actually help determine the PDF's conformance level as well. So it could be A, AA, or AAA rated, with AAA being the kind of gold standard, what everyone wants to strive towards. It kind of works a little bit similar, I think, I find, to like the BER rating of a house. Your energy rating, where you have A is best, obviously, and that's kind of how it works. So everyone will ideally every document should be AAA rated. But there are there's a huge list of these success criteria that are available online from the W3EC website. To give you an example, like I was looking at earlier, there is success criteria. I think it's success criteria 2.4.10, and it covers section headings. It says section headings are used to organize the content of the PDF document. So you can more or less check that off if you have that in place. Move on to the next one. So it's quite an extensive list.
Yeah. Like a checklist to work to. So is that like when NCBI are doing something like Insight magazine?
Yeah.
That's how it's followed, is it?
Exactly. So then we can give it a statement of conformance to say this PDF meets accessibility guidelines set out by the Web Content Accessibility Guidelines 2.0. That's
So what if people are still having an issue, maybe reading a document that should be accessible like that? Is there something that might cause that?
Yeah, a thing like that, Jude, is sometimes when you're navigating on your computer in a Windows environment and you navigate to the PDF, it actually, browsers are trying to be helpful to everyone, so it actually opens in the browser.
Yeah.
And that can sometimes strip away the accessibility, or the browser itself isn't supporting that accessibility. So if there ever is a PDF online, it's recommended for PC and laptop users is to download it. You can shift F10 over that link and save as and save that wherever you like. And when you open it with Acrobat Reader, all that accessibility functions are there.
Very good. Yeah. So if somebody has been having any issues with something like Insight magazine, for example, just try and make sure that it's downloaded is the key thing.
Absolutely. I think it'd be great to get some more feedback from end users. And I know people in the past used to get it in a Word document and sort of other versions, and like obviously it'll always be done in Braille and things like that. But with the Word version, like we were saying at the start of the chat here, was like we're limiting the people who can access that because it's not universal. Like someone on an iPad, someone on an iPhone, that might be their only device because they're so, a phone now is so multifaceted that you can do everything on it. So you might not feel the need to ever buy a laptop. And then if we send out a Word document to people as our main version of a magazine, we're sort of cutting off people from being able to use it. So even on your phone, it's going to have a PDF reader, and it'd be worth knowing how well that can interact with the accessibility features within the document, because like JP said, you can put in the heading structure, you can navigate through the document much quicker.
Yeah. Excellent. So if anybody does have some feedback that you can give us on that, that's excellent. We love to get feedback, particularly with if you let us know what system you're using, what device you're using, and what the difficulties are, if you've got any difficulties. But of course, let us know if it is working well as well, and that helps us in our development.
Yeah.
Very good. So one of the things that maybe people might think about with PDFs is the use of forms. Now, a lot of people might come up with maybe a form on a Word document. We've spoken before about the general thing of the difference between Word and PDF, but why is a PDF a good option for even things like forms which need to be editable?
PDF's a good option there, because if you spend time and make it accessible and you put in the text fields, like I said, it's not just on a computer you can navigate to these fields. It would also be on your phone or portable device or whatever device you are using, so you're able to fill out that form and then email it back to whoever is compiling it or compiling that information. But likewise, that's a very good way of doing it. It's better than Microsoft Word, it's better than other versions, but an online form is better for everybody.
Okay. So explain the difference there a little bit. So you're talking about an online form that is it. So in this case, we are talking about getting access to it via a browser.
Yeah, so if we were to email a form out to someone and we created it in Microsoft Forms, we're fairly confident that all features within that form are accessible. So therefore, whatever device it goes to, like we're not going backwards through that, creating that form, then making it accessible, then sending it out. So from our point of view, it saves a lot of time. From the end user's point of view, it's straight away, you get the form in the email, you click it, you're browsing through your browser, you're quite familiar with that. Yeah. And from our point of view is we're not actually receiving loads of forms and emails and then compiling it. It's all been compiled under one sort of location.
Yeah. Very good.
So they're like in the hierarchy of things, like PDFs are really, really high, but if it comes to a form, maybe an online form is better.
Yeah. Very good. That's good to know as well. So just with all of these different aspects of PDFs, obviously not everybody, if we weren't familiar with them beforehand, we're not going to remember every aspect of this. But if we are in the situation of needing to make a PDF document accessible, who could somebody contact if they wanted to make a PDF document accessible?
Yeah, well, this is a service that Ncbi Labs provides. So we do regularly check our kind of internally produced PDF documents. We mentioned the Insight magazine earlier on, but we also do this for several public and private companies too. So they can just send an email to labs@ncbi.ie. So if you have any kind of queries regarding making a PDF accessible, you can just email ourselves and we can check it out for you.
Perfect. Very good. Thank you very much, JP and Daniel, Sean and Joe as well, for your input into that. It's one of those subjects that, while it might not sound the most exciting to start with the idea of PDFs, actually because we use them so much, it's important to have a little bit of a concept about what makes them work, and if we're having difficulties, why that might be. So appreciate your input into that, and that's very helpful. Now, if anybody does have any questions relating to any of the subjects we're talking about today, so PDFs particularly at the moment, please do send us in your questions. So you can use the panel on the right hand side. If you're using Microsoft Teams, you can send us a question there, or you can email us at labs@ncbi.ie, and we'll try and get back to those before the end of the show if there's any particular queries there. Very good. So now we're going to move on a little bit, and we're going to think about some of the tech news recently. Now, we've actually had a few different things that have come out in recent weeks that we want to talk briefly about. Some of these things we're going to talk about a little bit more in depth in maybe a future live event. But first of all, maybe we have our panel still with us, so maybe we can just ask our panel to comment on one or two of these things. Now, first off, I understand that Google Home is basically no more. We don't have Google Home devices as such anymore.
Yeah, they seem to have been rebranding that slowly over the last year. Now with the new release of the new products in terms of it's Nest Audio rather than we used to call them Google Homes. So the overall term will be Google Nest, and then for the speakers it'll be Nest Audio. So there's a new one being released now in November, or towards the end of this month, about November, and it'll be around €98. But it's a much larger speaker than like an Alexa Dot. So it'll be around the size of the full size Alexa, but maybe slightly bigger. It's kind of almost the size of a lunchbox.
Yeah.
But with curved edges. And what makes this one different, I suppose, is there's a privacy switch on the back for people who feel that they don't want the speaker listening at certain times. There's a physical switch where you can slide and then the speaker can't respond to you. That'll be in software also, but there is a physical speaker. Yeah.
Okay, and that's so it's basically just a rebranding, and there is a new speaker coming out. Is there more than one? Is it a whole range of products, or is it just one main difference?
Well, there's one new product, and that is the Nest Audio. So that's the first one they're releasing. They will probably be releasing different versions of that in the next few months, but it's mainly they're releasing that one because of the merger of the two sort of terms, Google Nest and Google Home. And I think Nest was just a bigger sort of company in terms of, all the home products like your home heating and your sort of alarms and cameras and things like that there. So it made sense that that is the overarching term, and then like the audio is just like ways to maybe interact with those other devices, monitor them, and like they're talking about putting things like if you leave the house, it'll know your phone's no longer in the house, and therefore you can set up a routine to maybe turn your heating down a little bit or turn the lights off. And you can set that up for multiple people, so it's not just your phone. You're not going to, and then the wife has to sit in the cold house.
Yeah, that wouldn't be too advisable. I wouldn't call that progress necessarily.
No, that's a recipe for disaster. So they are allowing multiple devices. So even the kids' devices and things like that, if they leave the proximity of one of the sensors or the Nest, and therefore then you can set up a routine. Maybe I'll dim the lights here, or I'll lower the heat to a certain degree, and as soon as you come back in, it'll go back up.
Brilliant, very good. So that's something to keep an eye out for. Now, on the other side of things, we've got Apple's developments recently. I hear there's been a few different developments. Not hard to hear that there's been a few developments that have been fairly public about it.
I think Apple sometimes put out some bad news so they'll get loads of publicity.
Yeah.
I think that's why there's no power bricks coming with the phones. Literally everyone on the planet's talking about that, and that's great advertising one way or the other.
Yeah.
It's good for the environment. Good for the environment, though. Yeah. Might cost you a lot of money, but it's going to save the world in the long run.
Absolutely.
So on the positive side, what have Apple got for us now?
JP, you could take that one.
Sure. Yeah. So some of our listeners might be aware that Apple launched the iPhone 12 and HomePod Mini speaker recently. They actually had their virtual event in their headquarters in Cupertino, California, and it was interesting. It was titled High Speed. That's HI speed, and it's kind of a reference to the iPhone 12's new 5G capabilities. So Apple launched 4 new iPhone 12 phones. This included a new mini version as well. The iPhone 12 range has a new case design. It's meant to be quite similar to the iPhone 4 and the 5 models, with kind of flat sides, which were quite popular. All 4 devices have 5G connectivity, enhanced cameras, better screens, and are reportedly, this is interesting, must be four times more likely to survive being dropped. They have a new protection called ceramic shield that covers the glass, so it's supposed to be more durable, these phones. I wouldn't put that to the test, but that's basically.
Don't go around dropping it 4 times more frequently.
Yeah, it's interesting. One thing I found interesting was that they don't include a charger or earphones with the device. It's supposed to be Apple are claiming that it's kind of an environmental push on cutting out waste, but they do provide a charging cable. Something.
No headphones.
They don't provide earphones or a charger. Yeah.
And that charging cable is USB-C to USB Lightning, isn't it? So you have to buy a new charger.
Yeah.
But also, I suppose they were finding the Lightning headphones they were selling. Possibly a lot of Apple enthusiasts would have bought the AirPods. So maybe the other Lightning headphones were a waste for a lot of people, So I suppose there is some thought put behind it, and also it does encourage people to buy the AirPods as well.
Yeah.
Although other Bluetooth headphones will work with an iPhone. You don't have to go for the more expensive models if you prefer not to.
I do agree there. I think, but buying the new charger is probably beneficial in the long run, because like they're all new fast charging, and like nobody has to charge their phone overnight anymore. You can plug it in, and within an hour and a half, 2 hours, the phone's fully charged.
Yeah, and also you can buy wireless chargers now, which are great for people with visual impairments. You don't have to go searching around for the little connector at the bottom, which can break quite easily. You can leave it on a charging pad overnight, and it charges a little bit slower, but that's no big deal considering. The new iPhone 12 charger, the magnetic one, I think that charge is quite fast though. Yeah, so I hear. Yeah, it's, I know a lot of people won't have their hands on the iPhone 12 yet, but
well, it's good to know about the technology out there though.
Exactly. So as well, there is other features coming. I think it's only in the iPhone 12 Pro models to have I think it's 3 cameras in the back, but it also has a LiDAR detector. So I suppose the LiDAR is going to become a big thing in apps, mobility apps and things like that. So for example, technologies or devices that have it already are self-driving cars and robotic hoovers, and they do things like map out the area. So they can map out rooms in the house. They can map it emits light and detects exact measurements of areas, and it can detect objects and the shape of objects and how far away they are. So it can tell you. It could more or less by the time they have got to grips with all this technology and developed apps to work with it, I can see it working with the likes of Microsoft Soundscape and things really well with things like that. And I can see loads of mobility apps being introduced. There's even people claiming that it won't replace the cane or anything like that, but it'll give people a lot more confidence with the cane and tell them how far they are away from objects and things like that. It also does depth perception, which there's nothing out there that does depth perception at the moment, really. But LiDAR will.
I think it'll definitely augment its skills, like you're saying there, Joe. But yeah, replacing the cane is probably a long way off.
Yeah, no, that's what I said. It never actually do that.
That's I know. I'm just agreeing with you.
Yeah. This will support the use of mobility aids.
I suppose even
better than anything they reckon in the future. It'll take a year or two for all these apps to catch up and get it into their system, but there's a lot of talk about it now, and it's very exciting for blind people.
I suppose you'd even make a simple app like a ruler that would measure something that was small enough with the phone. You can measure the height. You can measure the height or length of something.
Well, actually, at the moment, it can measure the height of a person. So you can point the LiDAR camera at somebody, and you can find out how tall they are. So that'll just show you how quick it's been integrated. But if you can imagine, this has been used in the self-driving cars that are being designed. You could actually see that how it will be used in mobility apps in the future. If they're able to find how far away they are from things, I can see how we can use it.
Yeah, very good. So, go on.
I was just saying, I think it's a great idea. I think, just going to say, out of everything in the new iOS 14, I've probably been using the back tap the most.
Yeah. So just to describe to people what the back tap is, because they mightn't have it on they probably won't have it on their phone if it's an older one.
Will I take that?
Yeah, I think you should. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. That back tap. Back tap. It's in the accessibility options, and basically it allows you to tap the back of your phone twice, and the other option is to tap it 3 times to access some accessibility options on your phone. Well, that's the main idea of it in the first place, is for accessibility, but it can be used for a lot more than accessibility. So, for example, you can set it up to start voiceover, so you could tap the back of your phone twice and voiceover on. Or if you had a visual impairment and you had some useful vision, we'll say, and you used a magnifier on your iPhone, you could set the back tap twice to start up magnifier, rather than even using Siri. Or if you want to be more discreet with it, or if the bus is coming and you generally look at which bus is coming by using your iPhone camera or something like that. Depends on the person, of course, but just to access it really quickly, it's a good way of getting it up. You can the other ideas. I won't spend too much time on it, but other ideas people use it for is if they have Siri already, another way to get another assistant up. If you have Google Assistant in your phone, you can do a good assistant. Yeah, there you go. There's your second option for the Android enthusiasts. But so you can press. You could use maybe the three taps on the back of the phone to open the assistant. Or,
I think it's good that we went from one shortcut now to 3 accessibility or 3 shortcuts that are make things very accessible for people on the phone, which is great.
It's also very good for people that.
Am I right in saying that's just iPhone 8 upwards?
iPhone 8 upwards,
iPhone 7, I was searching it there, and no, this back tap. I thought maybe the update didn't install right or something.
You have to get an iPhone 12, Daniel.
Yeah, they do phase out these. They phase out these things.
All right. Very good. So that was the iPhone. Was there was another released from Apple as well, wasn't there?
There was exactly, yeah. And just with the iPhones, I know I heard claims that it's supposed to be good now that Apple have reportedly made an iPhone available for every budget. So I think about the iPhone SE, it's just under €500 now. I think the iPhone 12 Pro Max, which is, I don't think it's available yet. I think it's going to be available for pre-order on the 6th of November. I think that's going to be about €1,600. So it's kind of a good broad range of prices. So yeah, we mentioned that HomePod mini speaker was also launched at Apple's recent virtual event alongside the iPhone 12. And this was released, I suppose, as a way to expand their range of smart speakers. And so it's a new, smaller version of its HomePod. It's similar to what we'd be familiar with the Google Home and the Amazon Echo.
Yeah.
It's about, I think it's about 3.5 inches tall, has a kind of spherical design. It costs about a third of the price of the original full-size HomePod, but includes all the features that can be carried out using the virtual assistant Siri that we're all familiar with. I don't think it's going to be available until mid-November, they're saying, in Ireland. Some of the features will include a new intercom system, which allows you to send voice messages from one HomePod to another around the home, as well as other Apple devices. So if you have an iPhone or Apple Watch, you can it's compatible with those as well. Also has, interesting, a new hand-off feature. So it allows you to bring your iPhone close to the HomePod Mini, and it hands over the audio playing from the phone onto the speaker. It looks pretty cool.
Very good.
Yeah, so other than that, it's been designed to work with Apple Music, podcasts, all your kind of popular radio stations on TuneIn, iHeartRadio, and it's supposed to be compatible also with in the coming months with Amazon Music service as well. So I think it's at the moment, I'm just looking at prices. It's about £99 sterling. I say hopefully be available in Ireland for around middle of November.
Okay, that'll be an interesting one to keep an eye on as well.
It's going to be a big shaker in the market, because I think Apple did price themselves out with the original HomePod, €300. I know the sound was great on it and all, but because you could get Echo speakers and Google Nest Home speakers for, I suppose, less than €100.
Yeah.
This has brought down the price considerably, and I think it will shake up the market there. And it's kind of funny that Siri was the original assistant, but the other things have kind of taken over. You know, the other two companies has taken over a little bit, but this will bring them back in. This will bring them back in a little bit again.
Yeah,
it'd be interesting to see what the take up on that is.
Yeah,
I think it'll be big myself, especially with Apple fans. But it definitely will be. It'll be good coming towards Christmas for Christmas presents as well, things like that. But I mean, you can buy two of them for we'll say €200 roughly, and you can pair them it'll give you stereo sound. You know, that's another thing. You can also move the sound from your Apple TV onto these as well, if it could improve the sound from your TV. So I think it's going to be good. As JP was saying, they're trying to bring things down to more budget options. So even they brought out about a month ago, they brought out a cheaper version of the Apple Watch. So it's the Apple Watch SE. It's only missing one or two little features, and I think that'll be another thing that people will be branching out towards because of the price. I think it's €250 or something rather than the usual.
Yeah, very good. So just at the risk now of maybe starting up this debate again of Android and iOS, I know that Sean mentioned earlier about the fast charging of the Apple iPhone. I have to say my Android device manages to fast charge in 30 minutes. I'm quite happy with that. So maybe that's a score for the the Android there. But
I have a OnePlus phone as well, and I can fast charge. I can get about 75% in about 30 minutes, and fully charged in about 55.
Yeah, I think there's definite marks here for the Android side of it. Now, just thinking about that kind of comparison of Android and iOS 14 is out, and you've got Android 11 coming out as well. Any particular features there that are interesting to look out for?
Yeah, absolutely. There's as the lookout feature, which is this which is the OCR mode. So you can, it's like seeing AI. Now, it's available on older versions, but it's kind of launching with Android 11. They're making sort of more people more aware of it. So it will scan a document, it will read back a document.
I had a good road test of that there, Sean, the Google Lookout app, and I was impressed. Like, I have an old Samsung Galaxy S7 phone, and I gave it a road test on that, and I was very, very impressed with what it does. It competes very well with the Seeing AI, which is the Apple where Microsoft have provided the data onto Apple platforms.
It's done locally as well. It's not done over the cloud. It's actually
right. Yeah, that's one of the things I like about it. You can switch off your 4G or your Wi-Fi, and if you're out and about where reception is poor, it'll work straight out of the pocket. So it's fantastic from that point of view. Whereas the Seeing AI requires that your snapshot is sent back to the servers for computing and sent back to your phone again.
And the only downside to the app is you need at least 2 gigabytes of RAM in your device to run it. But if you've spent even half the amount on an Android phone as you have on your iPhone, it'll definitely have 2 gigabytes of RAM on it.
Yes,
absolutely.
It's great to have that option for people who weren't able to get maybe the Seeing AI app, and now to have a very good option for Android is excellent.
The only one little fault I found with it was it's only doing US dollars at the moment in the currency recognition. So I said, just for the laugh, I fired over a €20 note and it said $20 US. So yeah,
is there something in world politics we don't know about?
Yes, some agreement there on the currency. I don't know.
You heard it here first.
Yeah. So that's the only downfall I could find with the app. And look, as they say, like, these things are a lot of the features are still in beta, so they're still being developed.
Yeah.
Another thing too is it'll download products. It'll try and recognize products. Depending on obviously where you're connecting to the internet. So obviously for Irish users, it's going to download a database that's kind of UK and Irish users to try and identify products that that are more sold here than, let's say, your US products.
Yes.
Now there are a couple of absentees off that, but I'm sure that's going to grow and grow and grow over time. It's just like everything that starts off. All these IDs are fantastic, and they just keep adding and adding and adding data to it, and eventually it becomes a great all-rounder. So I'll say that's where this is headed.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to see the different refinements of that. Very good. So what about this Navi Lens? What's that all about?
So Navi Lens is this new technology. It's very, very similar to QR codes, but where QR codes have such fine detail in them, and you need to bring your phone very close to snap the picture. With a Navi Lens code, you can be up to 3 meters away to capture a small code that might only be like 2 inches by 2 inches. And it'll capture the detail in the code and then return the information that's needed. So Kellogg's in the UK have started putting Navi codes on certain boxes, as well as putting Braille on certain boxes. But the Navi code will let you open the app, you bring it within the field of distance to the box, and it will give you back all the information about that product in terms of, nutrients, gram size, what it is. Basically, everything you're getting on the box will come in that app.
That sounds really promising. It sounds like there could be quite a few different applications for that.
Yeah, absolutely. I've seen it demonstrated in videos where the person didn't need the whole, like when we're doing QR codes, you have to get very close and very precise. The person just glanced the phone in the direction of the box and picked it up immediately. So what they're sort of trialing this is in larger cities, they're putting maybe it could be 10 centimeters by 10 centimeter of these codes on at the doors of train stations or at different signs to allow people to get the information how to get to certain parts within that train station.
Yes.
Where in the past you had to be very, very close to the code you're going to scan. Now you can just wave the phone and it will capture it almost immediately, as long as you're pointing roughly in the right direction.
That sounds brilliant. That'll be really interesting to see how widespread that gets, and how many applications are made of that as well. So that'll be an interesting one to follow.
Absolutely.
What about this final one then, we were talking about different kind of home speakers and things before. The new generation Alexa, is that out already?
The fourth generation Alexa is going to be out now for November. Also, I think they're all getting ready. I think they're all getting ready for Christmas for selling these things. So the fourth generation Alexa, in terms of like it's a version that would be like the Dot, it's slightly bigger and it's spherical. It's like it'd be like twice the size of a tennis ball.
Okay.
And the reason why they're going with that shape is, well, the Dot was like a 360 speaker.
Yeah.
They found that nobody was actually putting them in the center of the room. So therefore the sound was being spread out too much. While now it's front firing. So you point it in direction, basically you want the sound to come out and you're going to have better sound results.
Gotcha. Yeah, okay. So that'll be, again, a good one to keep an eye on. And quite a lot of developments there recently in the tech world and different tech news that we've got. So even busy there.
Even there with the fourth generation one, they're talking about adding things like Care Hub, a way for checking in on elderly, family members, and through the Alexa device. And there's talk of an Alexa Kids version, but I can only find the US release for that. I can't seem to find a European release.
Yeah, so loads for us to kind of keep our eyes on at the moment anyway, loads of new stuff there, and appreciate all the information about those, Sean and Daniel and JP and Joe. Appreciate all the news about those developments. Very good. So hope you've enjoyed our show today. We've gone through a bit to do with PDFs. We've had a chance to have a look at various new technologies out and about, and we've started our new series of Meet the Team as well. Of course, if you want any help with any of the devices that we've talked about, you're going to have to let us have a little bit of time with the new devices, of course, to make sure that we get a chance to have a look at them ourselves. But any technology questions you ever have, you can contact Ncbi. And just a reminder that if you want to do that, if you want support from the Ncbi Labs team, you can call us from 9 to 5 Monday to Friday on 1850 92 30 60, or you can email labs@ncbi.ie, and you can avail of our wider Ncbi services by calling 1850 33 43 53 or emailing info@ncbi.ie. And of course, as always, you can make a donation to support our services at donate.ncbi.ie. That's donate.ncbi.ie. Or you can sponsor one of our live events by emailing labs@ncbi.ie, just to help keep our live events going, particularly now with the regularity increasing again. Now, just before we go, just a bit of a reminder of some of the things that we're going to be talking about in future weeks. So we're going to be talking a little bit more about the that news that we had there of the iOS 14 release and Android 11 release as well. We're going to be having a bit more of an in-depth discussion about that. We're also going to be talking about the Technology Training Centre. We flagged that on our last live event, and we're going to have a segment on one of our future live events, just talking a little bit about that initiative from Ncbi there as well. We'll also be introducing Ncbi Labs technology trainer Miriam Kelly in our next Ncbi Labs live event, which will be on next week. And later in the month, we're going to have a look at the Black Friday sale. So we're going to have a bit of a discussion there to see what sort of things are worth keeping an eye out for. So just a reminder that our live event has gone weekly again. So our next event is going to be next Tuesday, November 3rd at 2:30 p.m. If you want to stay up to date with everything that's happening on our live events, as well as plenty of more information that's in the weekly newsletter, you can subscribe to that newsletter on our website, or you can email us at labs@ncbi.ie if you'd like to do that as well. Great tips every week that come out that can be very practical in the software that we're using for accessibility. So great one to sign up for if you can. So all that's left for me to do today is to thank our panel once again, and to thank Denis Nolan for coming on the show earlier as well, and our guest Joe Lonergan. Appreciate the input throughout the show there as well. Of course, we want to thank everyone listening in as well, and we look forward to having you all back with us for next week's Ncbi Labs live event.